Hello, everybody. We are back with another episode in our tier list series. And today I am bringing you guys not a off-season tier list and not a classic jersey tier list, but this time an NBA team's future tier list. And what do I mean by future? Well, I really mean three things. Number one, do they have young talent with promising upside? Do they have most of, if not some, hopefully a lot of their picks in the next coming years? And do they have current superstars or older players or developed talent that they can flip for either picks or young assets? Those three things are really the main things I'm looking at here, and I'm kind of evaluating these teams from around 3 to 5 years out. So, and this isn't really like a how good how good is this team going to be in 3 to 5 years, but just their future outlook as of right now. So that's kind of the criteria for this. It'll make more sense as we kind of go through the teams. I can talk about what my thoughts are, and at the end, when you see all the teams ranked accordingly, you'll kind of understand more about why I think that. So let's stop wasting time and just get right into it. So number one, we have the Atlanta Hawks. And I think the Atlanta Hawks, for me, are going to have to go and be. Listen, they've got Trae Young, and that is one of the hardest parts about, being on your way to being a really good team, is finding the superstar, finding the guy. And Trae Young might not be the kind of superstar that they had hoped maybe 2 or 3 years ago he could have become. But, Trae Young is still a phenomenal player, and I think he can get even better than he is right now. So that's just going to be a constant for Atlanta if they decide to keep him around. But other than that, you look at their roster, and there's not really a lot to be that excited about moving forward, other than maybe a few rotation type guys. But those guys can only really take you so far. At a certain point, you're going to need superstars. So Jalen Johnson, AJ Griffin, Onyeka Okongwu, Kobe Buffkin, we'll see. But the young talent on their team doesn't necessarily pop off the page. And you look at their picks, and they don't have a ton of picks because of picks they gave away in the DeJounte Murray trade. So I think the jury is not out on that trade yet, right? Because they've still got time to figure things out, and the fit was weird before Quinn Snyder got there, and they've got plenty of time. But as of right now, the picks are out the door. The fit isn't seamless. They don't really have a ton of other players they can just flip for a ton of assets. I mean, you kind of saw what they got for John Collins and how they handled that whole situation. So it's not great for Atlanta, but you have to give them a respect. I mean, I think Trae Young by himself, he really carries his team as far as the future outlook. So I think B is fair for them. Any higher would be too generous, and any lower would be too mean. Next, we have Brooklyn. Brooklyn, I'm also maybe feeling B for them. I could move them down to C, but after the tumultuous few years in Brooklyn, I think they've really set themselves up nicely moving forward. They've got a ton of picks. They've got maybe not clear-cut superstar young talent, but they have a lot of young talent on that team. Nick Claxton's a super young player. He's really good. Mikal Bridges isn't that young, but he's still got a lot of good years left in him and room to grow as a player. Who else? Young players. They've got Ben Simmons, who is still, I would say, relatively young, and we'll see what happens with him. I think Brooklyn is an interesting team in that regard. They just kind of hit the reset midway through last year, and you look at their pool of assets, and I think they've got a pretty strong pool of assets. And if they wanted to trade for a superstar, I believe they could, just because of the assets they have and the players that teams would want in return, right? Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, Ben Simmons, Nick Claxton. They've just got a lot of guys who could be easy trade pieces with a lot of picks and with a lot of complementary players as well. So Brooklyn's got to be a B as well. Next, moving on, we have Boston. I think Boston can go in an A, and that's because they have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown on their team for the next 5 years plus, guaranteed, right? Having those two guys as your two best players is going to guarantee that you're a good team and that you're going to be competitive, and not just competitive, but competitive for deep playoff runs pretty much every single year. That being said, there are some worries with Boston, as I think we've covered on this channel on past full podcast episodes before. They have got some serious age issues in this team, in my opinion. They aren't that deep of a team. There are injury concerns. Jaylen Brown is making a lot of money. There are some concerns with this team for sure that can't just go completely unsaid. I could honestly hear people out who want to put them in S tier, but it's because of the reserves I have with this team moving forward, outside of Jason Tatum, obviously, and Jaylen Brown at times. Jaylen Brown really isolating himself from that contract. I think they have to go in A because they're going to be competitive for deep playoff runs, I think, for the next 5 years straight. Next, we have the Charlotte Hornets. And the Hornets are definitely an interesting team to think about here because would I say their future is better than Atlanta or Brooklyn? Probably, just because they do have LaMelo Ball and they do have Brandon Miller, who they just drafted. But as far as other young talent besides those two, they really don't have much other than maybe a Mark Williams, a Kai Jones. I guess I'm decently high on Mark Williams actually, but they don't have a ton other than those guys. They brought back PJ Washington. They brought back Miles Bridges, I guess, who aren't necessarily that young of players, but can still contribute. And they don't really have a ton of. Well, I think they do have their picks, but they don't have a ton of players who are a little bit older. They can just flip for significant assets or things that will really help expedite their rebuilding process. I mean, Gordon Hayward's trade value is basically zero just because of how much he gets injured. Other vets in the team, like Terry Rozier, this is kind of there. I think some team might end up taking him in the next year or two. They're just a weird team. I don't really know where to rank them because I could hear A, I could hear C, I could hear B. I think I'm going to go with B just to be a bit safe with these ones. Next, we have the Chicago Bulls. This one's rough. I'm thinking maybe D for the Bulls. They are just in a very difficult spot right now. The players they have in their team, they're older, aging players. Their trade value on the market right now or next summer is probably close to zero. Zach LaVine, I always think they can flip him for quite a lot, actually. I think more than people really think. But DeMar DeRozan's trade value right now is not much at all, and Vucevic is not much at all. The other aging players in their roster, they just couldn't really get a lot of assets for if they were to trade them. They do have picks, but they aren't actually committing to being bad enough for those picks to actually be meaningful. And maybe they will. I think this year is really the do or die season for the Bulls. But you never know. Jerry Reinsdorf makes interesting decisions daily when it comes to owning his respective sports teams. So we don't know. And also, as you think about young, promising talent, they just don't have much other than maybe Kobe White. But I think his ceiling is pretty already defined at this point. And they've got some other fun guys, interesting guys like Ayo Dosunmu, what's his name, Dalen Terry, yeah, they've got some fringe guys like that, but the Bulls' outlook for the future is bad, and it's going to take a lot of maneuvering and a lot of smart thinking by Karnisovas to really turn that ship around over there. Yeah, I just don't even know where to even start with the Bulls. Next, we have the Cavs. I think Cavs go in A. The Cavs are just, like, I don't want to say they're set, but it feels like they're kind of set. I mean, with the young players they have, Evan Mobley, who is already one of the best defenders in the league after his second season, Darius Garland, one of the best point guards in the NBA. He's going into his fifth season. They've got Donovan Mitchell, who they did trade a lot of picks to get, but has looked great so far with them. The fit with the rest of the team has been seamless. They've got other interesting young players. Isaac Okoro, I think, still has a lot of room to grow as a player. Jarrett Allen isn't that young, but isn't that old either. Like, he's going to be good for a while longer. Yeah, they don't have many picks, but the young talent on their team is undeniable. And the young talent is so good that if they did need to pivot or they wanted to go back, take a step backwards to kind of reset a little bit, they could easily do so. Donovan Mitchell is worth five first-round picks pretty easily. So I think Cavs are pretty solidly in A. Next, we have the Dallas Mavericks, and this is a pretty interesting one. I am thinking C, but C also feels too harsh because you can't just ignore Luka Doncic and how good he is and how good he's going to, or maybe not how good he's going to keep the Mavericks, but how relevant he's going to keep the Mavericks for however long they have him, right? But I can't just look at one superstar and put them any higher for that, right? Like, you look at the rest of the assets in the team, like, teams aren't willing to give up a ton for Kyrie if they were to try to move him. A lot of their other high-value assets they've just let walk or traded them away for nothing. They don't have a ton. They have picks, but they don't have like they don't have a plethora of picks by any means. I just struggle to see their like young talent really other than Luka. And I mean, I guess I've got some intriguing pieces like that Derek Lively, that new center they drafted, and they've got some other things going on there too. But yeah, I just don't feel that good about putting them any higher. That might be controversial, but that's okay. Next, we have the Denver Nuggets. Denver could honestly just go an S because Jokic is like 27 years old. Jamal Murray is like 26 years old. Michael Porter Jr. is like 23. Aaron Gordon is like 27, 26. Their team is going to be good for a very long time after this. I would predict them to win at least one more NBA championship in the next 5 years. I could honestly be not that surprised if they ended up winning more than that. They actually have picks. They aren't completely devoid of picks. They have an okay amount of first-round picks, a lot of second-round picks. They do have some young players who have still had their potential kind of like, not fully realized, and there's a lot of room to be tapped into. Peyton Watson, I think, is one of the most intriguing young prospects in the league. Christian Brown was playing finals minutes for them as a rookie. I think Denver just has a lot to look forward to, and I just don't see them slowing down at all. And I don't really know what could slow them down other than injury. I think just Denver is set up now. They've been set up for the last few years, and I think they're set up for the next few years as well. Then we have the Detroit Pistons. I'm thinking the Pistons go in B, and that's because Cade Cunningham is just such a dynamic player already, and his upside again isn't even close to being fully realized. Like, I don't think we've even scratched the surface as to what Cade Cunningham could be as an NBA player. That being said, Are there any other players in that team that have that same potential? I would say no. Jaden Ivey, I think, is going to be a really good NBA player. Will he ever be an all-star? I would probably... I mean, it's hard to say because he's only played 1 year, but probably not. Asar Thompson, we'll really see with him. I think he is a giant swing player. Like, I think he could swing way up, swing way down. Jalen Duren looks great as a rookie, but they're getting kind of weird with their lineups, trying to put like James Wiseman or Marvin Bagley alongside. They're trying to run two bigs, which I just don't really understand as far as maximizing the developmental stage of Jalen Duren's career, which is really the center they should be prioritizing. So I don't fully understand what's going on there. As far as the bigs, but they have a lot of guards who I think not all have pretty high. I mean, yeah, I guess they all have pretty high ceilings. I mean, Jaden Ivey isn't going to be a Ja Morant, but he's going to be really, really good in his own right. Cade Cunningham is going to be, I think, a superstar and one of the best point guards in the league. Really, he could honestly be that in like 2 years from now. So Pistons are here. They do have picks. They could, I mean, they don't really have a ton of old players, so I mean, it's hard to kind of evaluate them on that. But I think what could move the Pistons up next summer is if we see a year of like real gelling from this core, and Cade takes that leap, and we see more from Ivy, and there's reason to believe that Asar is going to pan out. Their big situation gets figured out. Monty Williams is a great coach to have around those young players. Monty is known for kind of helping teams establish their own culture, and that's exactly what Detroit needs. So, Detroit would probably go in high B tier, teetering on A tier if I had to kind of delve into it a little bit more. But yeah, I think B is fair for them right now. Next, we have the Warriors, and honestly, if we're being completely real with the Warriors, they go in D, just because they don't really have many picks, or at least not good picks. They don't really have a ton of young talent that's that promising. I mean, Jonathan Kuminga at this point is really the only young guy left that I think could carve out like a semi-significant name for himself in the league. Like, I'm not that high on Moses Moody. Andrew Wiggins isn't really a young player. They just traded Jordan Poole. James Wiseman's been gone for a little bit now. So yeah, their future outlook is just not that great as far as young talent and picks, but the players in their team are also aging a little bit, right? Like, Steph is 35, and you look, I guess, 3 to 5 years from now, he's not going to be at this level. I can't say that for sure, but I am assuming he's not. Klay Thompson's already taking some regression in his game. Draymond Green is already slowing down a little bit. They just traded their last young piece, Jordan Poole, or I would say not their last young piece, but the young piece that had the most amount of potential on that team, for a 38-year-old other point guard, and Chris Paul. I wouldn't even count him being on the team a year from now with his age and the way he's played the last few years. The Warriors, like, I don't want to seem like I'm dissing the Warriors, because you can't deny that what they've accomplished over the last 10 years almost has been anything short of amazing, right? But if we're looking forward a few years from now, I struggle to see how this team really finds itself in a good place as far as starting the rebuild whenever that happens. So I think D has to be it for them. Next, we have Houston. I kind of want to put in the same tier as Pistons, because I kind of see them in the same way, because I would say actually the Rockets could probably go higher. Yeah, I'm putting the Rockets actually higher. Actually, will I? No. Okay, B for now, but I can talk myself into putting them higher just because with the amount of young talent on that team, they can hang with pretty much every other young core as far as the amount of young guys like Jalen Green, superstar potential. Alperen Şengün has great potential. Jabari Smith Jr. great potential. Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason, Amen Thompson. They just have so many guys who I think could be really, really good players in this league one day. Is just the biggest questions with them are just how do we trust Houston to actually manage all those young assets in a good way? How will their development look in that system, in that organization? There are a lot of question marks that we just don't really have the answer to right now, and we don't really have as much reason to believe that they'll pan out as maybe some of the other teams that could go higher. They have picks. They just signed Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks as kind of their two old guys or older guys. If they wanted to trade them a year from now, I don't think they could get that much from them. But with the amount of picks they already have and young players, I don't think that matters too much. Could they go higher? I mean, I think I'm going to move them up. And maybe move Detroit up, but I'm going to keep Detroit here for now. Just to be safe, and I'll probably move things around as I think about things more. But anyway, I'm kind of all over the place. Next, Pacers. Pacers are going to go in B. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton, it's similar to kind of the Hawks of Trae Young. Is like they have that one guy to build the franchise around. They have their cornerstone. Now it's all about kind of filling in the gaps around them, and I think the Pacers have done a really good job. A better job than the Hawks have so far. Surrounding their main guy with the talent they need. The Pacers have drafted well, I think, this last year, bringing the guys they got in. They had a great free agency. Bruce Brown, Obi Toppin, I think, fit the mold of that team great. Obi Toppin still has so much more room to grow as a player that I am really excited to see what he does in that fast-paced Indiana offense. They have picks. They don't have to worry about that. They have players like Miles Turner, where if a contending team that also had assets to spare wanted him, they could easily flip him. Buddy Hield is another guy that contending teams could want. They could flip him pretty easily. I like the outlook of the Pacers long term. The reason they aren't higher, and the reason they can't get the edge over teams like Pistons, Hornets, Hawks, is that other than Halliburton, how many other guys on that team have like legit star potential? And if you ask me, it's not that much. Like Benedict Mathurin, I think, is only going to be so good in this league. Like I don't really see star with them. So other than Tyrese, there's not a ton that you can really look at and be like, yeah, they're going to be a star later in their careers that we know of. I mean, players kind of pop out of nowhere all the time, but with the information we have now, that's kind of where I have to put the Pacers a little bit. So that's just going to be how it is, but I really like what Indiana has been doing so far. Next, we have the Clippers. Clippers go in F. Legitimately, Clippers go in F. They have 0 picks. They have 0 young assets with star potential, and they're aging players that they could flip for assets theoretically. I don't think they could get that much for them at this point in their careers, and with how the trade market has been the last year. I don't think teams are going to be very willing to throw both picks and young talent out the door in exchange for PG or Kawhi, just because they're aging, they hardly ever play, and which is on top of the injury concerns with them, how many good years are we going to have of PG and Kawhi left to warrant sending out multiple first-round picks and young talent? The Clippers, this is the most do-or-die season of all time for any team in the NBA with the Clippers right now. They have to get it done. They have to show something to warrant keeping this team around more, because if they if it comes playoff time and they lose in the first round, or they make it to the second round, but PG and Kawhi get hurt, it's like they just have to blow it up. They have to be done. It's rough. Their future outlook is pretty bad over in Clippers land. So things could change, but I doubt it. I think from 2025 for however long after, I think they're going to be very, very, very bad, and it's going to take them a long time to find their footing and get started on the rebuild. Next, we have the Lakers. Lakers are going to go and see. They don't really have any picks. They have some young assets, young talent, rather, that being like Austin Reeves, I think, is going to be really good. Rui Hachimura is a younger player who I think showed a ton last year in the playoffs, especially. But other than that, there's just like not really a ton of young talent in LA. They have their older players for sure that they could flip pretty easily for picks and young talent. Like LeBron's trade value is just like impossible to figure out, so we're just gonna skip that. But Anthony Davis, if they wanted to trade Anthony Davis, they could get a pretty big haul for him, right? D'Angelo Russell, Jared Vanderbilt, other guys in their team that if they did want to hit more of the reset, there's going to be teams that are going to be willing to take a flyer on those guys. So it wouldn't be that hard to ship them out the door. But you think 3 to 5 years from now, other than Austin Reeves and maybe an older Anthony Davis, like what is really left on that Lakers team? I mean, Lakers have never really had an issue getting players to want to play there, which will always give them a leg up in these future predictions, is because the Lakers just kind of managed to get things done and have the cards fall their way. So we don't know for sure with them, but I think C with the Mavericks is kind of exactly where I'd put them. Next, we have the Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies got to go an A for me. The Grizzlies, I was a Grizzlies hater for a long time, but even though I'm still not very fond of them, I think the conversation around the Grizzlies has gotten so weird, and obviously it's because of Ja and his off the court issues. But like, are we just gonna forget like the Grizzlies don't have one of the best young cores in the NBA? I mean, Ja Morant, how good he is so early on into his career. Jaren Jackson Jr. is still really young, probably the best defensive player in all of basketball. Desmond Bane is just going into his 4th season, one of the best shooters in all of basketball. They've got other younger players in that team. Off the bench, it just kind of seems like every year they've got some like younger bench rotation guys that just step up and just kind of play that style of basketball great. They have picks, like they didn't just dump a lot of their picks at the trade deadline last year like they were trying to. They kept onto them, which I think will be pretty big for that team. They actually got picks back in the Marcus Smart trade, which I actually love for Memphis. Even though Marcus Smart isn't going to get that much better than he is now, that's not really what they need. I think they're trying to win now. But even though they're trying to win now, I think their future outlook is great. Like 5 years from now, like why aren't they going to be the same level of great they are right now? So if you just take the Grizzlies like for what they have been on the court the last 2 years, like they are really set up well for multiple years of being a high seed and being competitive in the West. Next, we have Miami. I think Miami is also going to kind of go in C. Excuse me. Miami, if they end up getting Damian Lillard or not completely changes the outlook of this, right? Like if they give up everything they can for Damian Lillard, they're going to be really, really good next year and the year after that and probably the year after that. But 5 years from now, how what is even left on that team, and it's just not much. Like their picks are gonna be gone. Young assets are gonna be gone. Jimmy's gonna be old. Dame would be old if he ended up getting on the team. It would just be Bam, kind of around like age 30, 31, just kind of cooling, just kind of kicking it. I don't think their future is that great. If they were to trade for Dame, but if they were to not trade for Dame and just kind of keep their cards close to them, I think you could kind of rationalize putting them higher just because of Bam and Tyler Hero and a lot of the other younger guys in their team that I'm pretty excited for. Like, I think Nikola Jovic is going to be super interesting. Jaime Jaquez Jr., super interesting, maybe. So as of right now, they're kind of a little bit in ambiguity because the Dame stuff is still so much up in the air. So I think C is going to be good for them. Then we have the Milwaukee Bucks. And the Bucks are also a bit interesting because I think you could argue them being in C, right? Because you look at their team, and other than Giannis, they've got a bunch of aging players. Jrue Holiday aging, Chris Middleton aging, Brook Lopez aging. That's just kind of how it is. Bobby Portis is already like in his 30s now, maybe. So their core is aging, and I think they do have picks, which will be nice, but I don't think a lot of those guys who are aging, they could really get that much for, maybe, if they were to trade. Actually, maybe that's not true. I think they could get a decent amount for Jrue Holiday or Chris Middleton if they were to trade them kind of later in their career. But I guess it's a little bit complicated, too, because, like, Giannis will probably be still great, but how great is because of his durability concerns later in the line. I think I'm being a little bit too harsh. I'm going to move him up to B. My fault. I think B is probably a little bit more accurate of how I feel about them. I guess it just feels weird putting them on the same tier as Detroit or Charlotte. Because I just maybe there I might keep them at C. I don't feel great about it because if there was a tier like in between B and C, they'd go right there. I just like, again, it's similar to the Heat a little bit, where it's like the Bucks right now with their core, they're going to be super good for the next 2 or 3 years at least. I expect them to win, or I don't know if I expect them, but I think they could very easily win another championship, maybe even 2 more with this current core they have right now. But after that, that's kind of when more question marks begin to kind of come up for them. Next, we have Minnesota, and I'm definitely going to be a bit biased with the Minnesota ranking. I think they go in A, and maybe that's not that biased, but like, obviously when you think about their future, you think about like all the picks are just gone and all that. But really, with the Timberwolves, I don't think them not having a first-round pick every other year for the next 5 is that much of an issue for them, just because of the young talent they already have in that team. Like, Anthony Edwards, his ceiling as a player is nearly unmatched for players of his age. Jaden McDaniels can be really, really good in the NBA one day. Already is really, really good, but can get even better. I think maybe all-star for him. Naz Reid is a really good young player. They've got some other kind of fringe guys in that team that could be really good. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is like a young guy. Josh Minott, Leonard Miller. They're interesting with the amount of young talent they have in that team as it is. And even without the picks, I think they aren't completely set. I feel pretty strongly about them, like 3 to 5 years from now, having the superstar Anthony Edwards and the complementary pieces having developed by then to really keep them relevant. And as far as players they can trade right now for instant value, like if the Cat thing just doesn't work after the season or during the season, like they could flip him for honestly 3 or 4 first round picks if the team is out there, right? Rudy Gobert they couldn't get that much for, but Rudy Gobert could still get you something. Kyle Anderson could get you something. Mike Conley, a lot of teams would really like Mike Conley on their team. So they do have outs, right? And they have options, but their young core is still there. And I think that's going to help them so much in the aftermath of trading so many of their picks away. Next, we have the Pelicans. And if I'm just ignoring injury concerns, I think the Pelicans have to be A. Just given the amount of young talent on that team, like Zion Williamson. Yeah, he hasn't played a ton in his career, but when he does play, he's just so good. Brandon Ingram is still just entering his prime right now as a player. Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, those two wings that they got in the same draft somehow are just scratching the surface of what they could be both defensively and offensively. I think they have a lot to look forward to over there in New Orleans. And they have picks, right? They haven't really given away a lot of their picks. They have most of them. They do have players they can trade if they want to get some assets immediately, more draft picks, more young talent. CJ McCollum, there's going to be a market for him. Valanciunas, I still think there's going to be a market for him too. Even like Zion or BI, if they wanted to just move off one of them, they could easily and get a lot back for. So, I mean, the Pelicans, definitely a polarizing team, but I'm pretty high on those still, despite all of their injuries and whatever else is going on. Next, we have the Knicks, and the Knicks are going to go in B. The Knicks are going to go in B because they have a lot of young talent, and they have a lot of picks, a lot of assets, and they have guys that can move off of if they want to. I think they have a lot of options. They could go for the superstar. They could keep their current team. They could just sell off the older players and just start have a real organic rebuild over there. You think of the young players they have in that team in New York. Jalen Brunson is still relatively young, just kind of entering the prime of his career. Quentin Grimes was great last year. Emmanuel Quickley was great last year. Mitchell Robinson, I still think has some room to grow in his own game. The Knicks are set up quite well moving forward. They don't have the one young star or young emerging star that a lot of these other teams in their tier have, but they have a ton of options and a ton of young, more complementary pieces that are just as important to bringing winning basketball and prosperous basketball to an organization for years to come. So 3 to 5 years from now, I could definitely see the Knicks still being relevant and still being in the mix because of the assets they've hoarded up over there. Then we have OKC, and I think OKC just has to be an S, right? I mean, they have all the picks. They have all the picks in the world. They have all the young stars and young talent in the world. And that's just kind of what it comes down to. I mean, Shea is already a superstar, and could get even better. Jalen Williams was runner-up of Rookie of the Year last year, and you could argue he should have won it. Chet Holmgren, his potential is just through the roof. They've got Josh Giddey. They've got a lot of other guys in their team that could really take steps. They've got so many picks. They can just trade all those picks for anybody they wanted to. They could draft a bunch of guys and just have a stacked roster for years. OKC is set up so well. It feels almost a little bit unfair with how well OKC has been set up. Next, we have Orlando. Orlando is just like OKC. They just don't have as many picks, right? They don't have the same amount of picks as OKC because OKC's picks are crazy. But Orlando has their young talent is on par with OKC's. I mean, Paulo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, Cole Anthony, Markelle Fultz. What's the point guard they drafted this summer? Anthony Black. Anthony Black is going to be so good. I think he's going to be so good. Jet Howard, Wendell Carter Jr. is still kind of entering the prime of his own career. They're super set up, and I think they're going to be so good for years to come. Like 3 to 5 years from now, I'm kind of expecting them to be like competing for a championship by then. That's how set up they are. Next, we have Philly, and Philly's going to go in D, kind of with the Warriors and Bulls. Philly, they're in a tough spot too because obviously Joel Embiid is. I don't want to say he's nearing the end of his prime, but like I think I don't know. Like I think they might. I don't want to say they've missed their window to win a championship around him, but they've had a lot of shots already, and they just haven't done it. And with the James Harden stuff going on, and with they don't really have a ton of picks in their team. They have a lot of old guys. They've let a lot of their other assets just kind of walk in free agency. It's just kind of weird over there, and like nobody, and I mean nobody, knows what's going on. So Tyrese Maxey does help him out quite a bit, but like how much better can he really get than he is now? You know what I'm saying? So Sixers and D. I am probably being too harsh, but that's kind of how I'm feeling right now. I could be convinced to move them higher. Suns. I would say Suns are in C tier. Like, well, no, I think Suns are in. I mean, they have Devin Booker, right? I'm gonna put Suns in D mainly because of their financial concerns in the next few years. Like that second apron is absolutely going to just like stifle their decision making and their ability to maneuver and the options they have, right? So other than Devin Booker, like how many young stars that team really have? Like they don't really have any. And Devin Booker isn't even like a young player anymore. Like Devin Booker is in the prime of his career right now. And after KD eventually kind of ages out of his time in Phoenix, and Bradley Beal does the same, like what can we even expect from the Suns other than they're going to have Devin Booker, who's going to be like in the prime of his career? They could get a ton for him if they wanted to trade him and really hit the reset, but like they have 0 picks, serious financial concerns, not a lot of young stars with potential. So yeah, I mean D it is. What keeps them out of F is because like they have Devin Booker, right? So that just automatically puts them in a better situation, like as far as like 5-year, 3-year, 4-year outlook than the Clippers do. So Suns go in D. And next we have the Portland Trailblazers. And the Portland Trailblazers, in my opinion, are also going in A. Because I think that the young pieces they already have, without trading Dame yet, are already great. I mean, Scoot Henderson, I think, is going to be a generational type player for the Blazers. Shaedon Sharpe, he had some flashes last year of being a superstar in his own right. Anthony Simons is still a super young player who's super, super good. And I think they should keep him around just to see what happens, see how much better he can even be in a bigger role. They don't have a ton of other young talent other than that, but those 3 names are just so prominent that I feel like that deserves A by itself. And with Dame, when they trade him, they are going to get a haul. Like I think a legitimate haul of multiple first-round picks. They're going to get young players. They're going to be set up even more than they already are. And I think in like a year or 2 from now, once the Dame stuff is all in the past and we've seen more from their young players and draft picks, I think we're going to be talking about the Blazers the same way we do the Thunder or the Magic now. That's how good I think the Blazers can be with this rising core of guys like Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe and Anthony Simons. Next, we have the Sacramento Kings, and the Kings are going to go in B. because they have their picks, right? They have not a ton of young talent, but they have enough, right? Like Keegan Murray, I think, is going to be really good, and I think Keegan Murray has so many more layers to his game to unlock than we've even started to realize with him. De'Aaron Fox is still relatively young, and he's going to have a ton of years left in him of being really good. Malik Monk is kind of in that same lane of being like relatively young and having more years left in him. They've got Kevin Huerter, who's a young player. Domantas Sabonis is not old by really any mean. I think the Kings are set up fairly nicely, right? Like, we'll see. I mean, I think they're going to have to make a big splash for maybe another like star level player eventually, just to kind of propel them to like championship level contention. But as of right now, I think B is great for Sacramento. They have things to look forward to, and with the success we saw from them last year, I think they could pretty easily replicate a lot of that same stuff for years to come. Next, we have the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs are going to go in S tier just because when you can draft a player with the upside that Wembanyama has, like, maybe it won't hit. Maybe it'll only hit like 85-90% of what Wembanyama could be, but that's still such a good player as it is that I think they're just like, their future is just so, it's going to look so good. They've got Wembanyama, other young players in the team, Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan, Trey Jones, Keldon Johnson. They've got a ton of just young players in that team that are going to be good for a long time and are going to stick around for a long time. They've got a ton of picks for the DeJounte Murray trade. They've got picks that they've got back from the Jakob Poeltl trade. They're set up super nicely, and Popovich is always going to find a way to maximize those players and win. And I think as long as he's the coach, and as long as Wembanyama is what's advertised, and the other players in that team pan out, and they use their picks right, I think the Spurs are just so set up at this point. Next, we have the Raptors. The Raptors are so weird because, like, they've got Scotty Barnes, who I think has gotten just like super disrespected in the last year. But other than that, like, their young talent is almost non-existent, it feels like. I mean, Pascal is kind of getting up there in age. OG is, I think OG's ceiling is just, it's been hit already. Like, I don't think the breakout is coming with him. They just drafted Grady Dick, so we'll see how he kind of looks, but they're really weird. They keep on trading picks away for no reason, which just doesn't make any sense to me. They don't want to trade Pascal or OG away because they think they can still win, which is just only going to make their future look worse and delay the inevitable, which is blowing it up for them. Again, they've got Scotty Barnes and Grady Dick, which is, I think, more to look forward to 5 years from now than any of these teams below them. But they're undoubtedly in a tough spot. The Raptors are. So, yeah, we'll just have to see. This season will reveal a lot, and I hope changes come. Next, we have Utah. And Utah, I'm going to go put in... I think A just has to be it for Utah. With the amount of picks they have and the amount of picks that they've just acclimated over there, from Minnesota, from Cleveland, from other teams, like from LA, they have that one pick from them. They have a ton of picks. They have a lot of young assets. Maybe not the same young assets as other teams in this tier, but Walker Kessler is going to be so good for so many years in this league. Lauri Markkanen is still a relatively young player who's going to be good for a while. Colin Sexton, Ochai Agbaji, Taylor Hendricks, who I'm super high on, they just drafted. I think the Jazz are pretty well set up for a lot of years, and I could see them making a splash for a superstar. I could see them just kind of sticking with the homegrown way of doing things. The Jazz have a ton of options, and their 5-year outlook looks great, if you ask me. And then finally, we have the Washington Wizards. And the Wizards are going to go in B because they finally hit the reset. But is there enough there yet to concretely say that their future is just going to be great, or they're going to be great like 3-5 years down the line? I don't think so. We're going to have to see how Jordan Poole adapts to that new environment. We're going to have to see how Kyle Kuzma looks in a bigger role as well, and if he can kind of grow in his own game respectively. We're going to have to see if the other kind of young players in the team kind of pan out. Bilal Coulibaly, we'll see with him. Deni Avdija, we'll see with him. They've got other guys like Corey Kispert, Johnny Davis, who are just going to, their careers could just end up going so many different ways. Tyus Jones is a great addition, but how much better can Tyus Jones really get from what he is right now? I would have liked to see them get a lot more picks from the Porzingis and Beal ship away as they did this summer. And if they traded them last summer, I think they would have got a lot more. But because they didn't, this is kind of how it is for them. So I think B is fair for the Wizards. So I believe that is everything. And we can wrap up the video there. So those were all 30 teams put in a tier list based on their future. Again, 3 to 5 years out from now, based on young talent, draft capital, and ability to maneuver away from their current team construction. So that'll be just about it. Leave a like and subscribe. We're going to pump out so much more content in the next multiple months that you guys don't want to miss any of it. So leave a like, subscribe, stay tuned with the channel, follow us on Twitter, do all that. And thank you for the support so far, and have a good one.